This is Podco Media Networks.
It's the Innovation Podcast with Mark Reed Edwards and Garnet Harriman. Let's start the show.
Garnet, how are you doing?
Great. It's another beautiful day in Laguna Beach.
Yeah, is there ever a bad day in Laguna Beach?
You know, every now and then Trump comes through and does a stump for a local politician. Those are pretty bad days. But other than that, no.
Earthquakes, things like that.
Earthquake, yeah. Chinese invasion.
Anyway, we have a real innovator here with us today. Ryan Merkley, CEO of Creative Commons, is with us. Ryan, welcome.
Hello.
Hey, Ryan.
All the way from the Great White North in Canada.
Not that white right now. We are in summer, so we've had 2 weeks of very, very hot, humid days, 90+% humidity, and a couple days that top 40 degrees Celsius with humidex.
Wow.
We're, yeah.
That is warm.
Climate change is not real. Really, it's not. The Great White North is melting, but it's fine. Everything's fine.
I think that was the subject of the last Trump speech here in Laguna Beach.
Yeah. So, Ryan, it's great to have you here. Can you share your career background and how you ended up at Creative Commons?
Sure. Happy to talk about it. And thanks for inviting me to be on the show. People often say, you know, how do I get where you got? And my honest answer is I have no idea. I've been very fortunate and had a pretty interesting path. And if I'd sat down at the beginning of all of this to say this is where I would be, I don't know if I could have done that. I think the through line of my work or my career has been the intersection of technology and social good. I started out with dreams of being a journalist and was really passionate about that and found myself frustrated at being on the wrong side of the story. And what I mean by that is I would be writing these stories and reading about things that were happening in the world that were frustrating to me and wasn't in a position to have an impact on them. And so I got interested in looking for ways that I could be on the other side of that story and try to make a difference. I began at Engineers Without Borders. In their earliest days, I was the first non-engineer to join that group. Mm-hmm. And EWB is an international development organization that gets engineers to do work largely in the developing world or the global south on issues that intersect with social good and technology. And so I was a writer and a communicator, and that was really my path ultimately to now being in an executive role was communications. And so I had some opportunities to do that. In particular, worked in an agency in Toronto, where we did what at the time was called social marketing, which back then meant marketing for social change rather than social media. And one of the things that agency didn't do was politics. And that seemed like a missed opportunity to me. It felt to me like so much of the change that we want to make and are subject to in our society is driven by how the political process can work or not work, as the case may be. Yeah. And I wanted to be involved in that. And so a colleague of mine quit our jobs and got involved at what was then a municipal campaign. And I spent a bunch of time trying to figure out how to get someone elected at the municipal level in Toronto. That person got elected and asked me to go work in their office. And that really set me on the path. I spent 7 years in municipal government at the City of Toronto. I worked for a number of city councillors, including the deputy mayor and the budget chief, and ultimately ended up in the mayor's office running the city budget and working on some technology files, I guess. The job I had after the city was at Mozilla, where I would often joke I was the least technical person in the room coming from communications. But in the mayor's office, I was often the most technical person in the room and would get the technology files on things like the city's 311 launch or a project that the mayor, David Miller, and I started, which was Toronto's Open Data Project. And it was open data that led me ultimately to Mozilla after David Miller chose to leave office and not to run for a third term. And so I spent some time at Mozilla, but by that point had moved out of communications and into first policy and then program and sort of executive leadership. So I was chief operating officer at Mozilla and then ultimately was recruited into the CEO role at Creative Commons a little over 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. So Creative Commons is a well-known name. It's a, well-known brand.
Mm-hmm.
But I would wager that most people don't really know how it works or what you do. Can you share the mission of Creative Commons and how you work?
Yeah. So every day we get up in hope of creating a vibrant, usable commons powered by collaboration and gratitude. The idea under this is a collection of shared works shared by individuals and organizations from all over the world in hope that they will be used and reused to their greatest possible benefit. And it's a bit of a leap of faith. You put that work out into the world and you set some simple permissions that say anyone can use my work so long as they follow these simple terms.
Right.
And that, to us, leads to a more equitable, accessible, innovative world in everything from art and creativity to scientific discovery and beyond, and to education. And in the idea that underpins all of this is that the story of humanity is one of sharing. And copyright, as it has evolved and become more constricted, stands in the face of that. And so Creative Commons was designed to make that simple and invisible, or at least easy, so that people could share as they wanted simply and easily and invite others to reuse their works.
And it relies on an honor system in a way, right?
I would say first and foremost, Creative Commons licenses rely on copyright. They are built on top of the legal structure that is now a global structure for copyright supported by national laws and international trade agreements. And so we start there.
Yeah.
And then the licenses build on top of those and create a set of terms that think of it as a standard offer that the creator can make to everyone in the world to say, you may use these works. But I think, the idea of an honor system, I think, might imply that if you don't do it or don't follow the terms, there are no consequences.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the licenses are as enforceable as copyright. And so if I use your work and I fail to use the terms, I'm guilty of infringement. And our hope is that your first stop is to have a conversation and try and work out the differences, because the most common failings of use and reuse are, misattribution, or let's call it insufficient attribution. I accredited you, but not in the way you'd hope to be credited. And by and large, those things get worked out by people talking to each other rather than people taking each other to court.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that over the history of Creative Commons in the many jurisdictions where CC licenses have been tested, they hold up under the law and are supported by both the license terms, which were written by a group of very smart lawyers before I joined the organization, and also the laws of copyright.
And there's no shortage of works that are cataloged, if that's the right term, 1.6 billion. How fast has that grown in recent years, and where is it headed? What's the rate of growth?
When I started at Creative Commons, we began a project called the State of the Commons Report in order to start to count and tell this story. And when we did the first one in 2015, the number was a little over 800 million works.
Yeah.
And so over that sort of 5-year window, we've seen the Commons double in size.
Yeah. Is that something that every 5 years you're anticipating it doubling, or is it going to accelerate?
I mean, it's hard to tell because the Commons is made up of just about every kind of thing you could copyright. So everything from images to audio to 3D models to now data sets and other types of copyrightable content. And so, growth in each of those areas is dependent on, how people are choosing to share at a given time. It's worth noting that copyright is automatic, and it's automatically set to closed as the default. So when you make a work, from the minute you put pen to paper, your copyright term begins, your exclusive right to decide who uses that work, if at all, and in what way, begins. And in the US, the term of copyright is your life plus 70 years. So a very, very long time. And so for a work to enter the Commons, there are only two ways really for it to enter the Commons. One is for you to make the work, live your life, die, and us all to wait 70 years for that work to enter the public domain. And the second option is that you can choose to share it early using a Creative Commons license. So in every single one of those 1.6 billion works, somebody chose to share that work. And so that's, for us, that's a pretty significant gift. You're giving up a set of rights, maybe all your rights, or certainly a number of them, to potentially exploit that work. And instead, you're choosing it to give it to the world and invite them to collaborate asynchronously with you on building something new.
Yeah. One of the extraordinary things is seeing Creative Commons on Flickr and some of the extraordinary photos that are available there through Creative Commons copyright. It's amazing what's there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the Flickr compendium or collection is one of the largest archives of the Commons. It represents almost probably close to a quarter of the entire Commons. Yeah. And so, as Flickr's has its ups and downs and has been sold and resold again, it's still remained as sort of a piece of the old web, a thing that has all this goodwill because it became this sort of piece of essential infrastructure for the image commons.
Yeah. What are the key challenges when you wake up in the morning? What challenges do you face with copyright every day?
As a CEO of a nonprofit, the number one thing I think about when I wake up in the morning is fundraising, because we're a nonprofit and we're supported largely by individual donors and foundations who support our work. So that's thing one. But in the copyright space, it's the ever encroaching restrictions of copyright, largely driven by big rights holders who are trying to protect their ability to profit and to kind of maximize their ability to do that and kind of break this trade-off that was supposed to exist in copyright, the trade-off between the incentive to create. So I'm willing to make something because I know that I'll be able to profit from it or benefit from it because it will be mine when I make it. And the trade-off that is inside that, which is everything is a remix of everything else to some degree or another. And all culture and knowledge is built off of the culture and knowledge that came before it. And that idea was meant to reflect, the rules of copyright were meant to reflect this, I won't even say balance, these two elements of creation, that the originality of the creator and their inspiration for their work, but also the fact that it is impossible to create in a vacuum, and that new works all stem from everything that came before them.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, maybe more specifically, we see an encroachment of terms of copyright everywhere in the world. And while a decade ago, that would have largely been done in national legislative processes that were comparatively public and accountable, they are now being done mostly in private, secret trade agreements, where copyright is expected to stand up against the number of suit imports and tariffs against steel and car imports and, softwood lumber. And in a trade agreement, the copyrights of individual users will never compete with the real on-the-ground jobs of the auto industry or steel or agriculture. And so copyright increasingly gets short shrift and is a bit of a bargaining chip, but it's not a very big chip on that table. And so we lose a lot in those secret agreements, both because it doesn't have a big negotiating power, and also because we can't see in those rooms.
Next time, we talk with Ryan about the tight restrictions of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act a bit, the music business, plus what it's like to manage a widely dispersed organization that has no central office and a community that operates in 70 countries. Plus, we talk about the future of Creative Commons. Coming soon, Jonathan Webb of App Harvest, Lauren Conaway of Innovate Her KC, and Tommy Williams of Tommy's Superfoods. Lots more on the way too, so stay tuned. But next time, more with Ryan Merkley.
Thanks for joining Garnet and Mark on the Innovation Podcast. Visit theinnovationpodcast.co to subscribe and listen to other episodes.